Stockholm 3 years ago. I went from being a tourist and exploring all the nice parts of town and what the city has to offer to this actually being my home. There's this great balance between nature and the city. I don't own a car for the first time in my adult life, but I don't need it. And the fact that everyone can have access to higher education makes it a very unique place to teach, to work, and to do research. There's also a lot of international students coming in that enables all these creative companies and ideas to emerge from those groups.
Feeling of living in a big city, but I also like that feeling of getting a bit of a break and being able to escape it. I think there's a lot of balance at Swedish companies, and here when you have the so-called flat organization, I think it makes for a better place of innovation. If I felt there was a problem or if I felt that there was something that needed to be innovated on, I have this feeling that I could go to people that were high up at the company and that I could try to make the company better.
I'm in a place where I can be myself, where I can express myself, where it's okay to cry and no one's gonna say, oh, you're weak. I went through like real life feelings. I'm doing things that I never thought I'll do. And people don't really care who's doing what, they just want to go support. That's how a community should be. The people here, like, they make me feel at home. Do things to satisfy yourself and not do it to make other people feel belittled. I think that's the secret formula of Stockholm. To be humble.
Hi, and warmly welcome to this seminar hosted by Invest Stockholm in the light yard of Stockholm Business Region, which is 2 companies within the city of Stockholm. And even though it's great weather outside and so hot in Sweden and Stockholm today, I hope that, and I know actually that there's a lot of you on link watching on this, so I hope it will be a really useful hour with an amazing panel and a really interesting report. So what is Invest Stockholm? What is my purpose here? I'm the CEO at Invest Stockholm, and we are the official inward investment promotion agency. And we work with marketing Stockholm, of course, but also attracting investors, company, and talents to Stockholm. And when I am speaking about Stockholm, I mean the greater Stockholm region, actually, and that's actually a third of Sweden. So we kind of have taken most of Sweden under our arms. Stockholm's DNA is very much based on 3 parts, with trustworthy, visionary, and free. And that is what Stockholm is based on. Also, a lot of Sweden is based on historical in its DNA. We are the city built on transparent public institutions and supportive social systems that you might know. This, together with our long history of democracy and also creating a safe atmosphere where we have confidence in our society and each other. And that's one of the parts in the DNA. Innovation, the other one, has historically always been a part of our DNA, back to Alfred Nobel and other really important innovations in Sweden, and also researchers. And this innovative dreaming is enabled by the security or freedom, which we enjoy, of course, including the freedom to think outside the box and also to be early adopters, which Stockholm especially is known to be. We are the equal city that never compromises on freedom of speech, religion, or sexuality. This creates an open climate in which we encourage each other to think for ourselves, to be different, of course, and to stand up against oppressive systems. And even during these pandemic times with COVID-19, I think that we in some way have chosen our own way. And when it comes to that way, I think it's come down quite close to the Stockholm DNA, actually. We have given the people a lot of freedom. within guidelines from our institutions and researchers. And that have been the Swedish way and the Stockholm way. So this seminar is based on a report, and you can download it on our website, investstockholm.com. And you can also put questions to the amazing panel. And that link, I think it will be shown later on, so you can put via Mentimeter. And the report is written of a talent by himself, working here at Invest Stockholm. And he left his job, I don't know how many years that is, but left his job as a tax lawyer, sold all his stuff, including cars and everything. And I think I actually was traveling around the world backpacking for like 7 years or something, and found love in a Swedish girl, as many of the talents moving here does actually, in Australia, and ended up in Stockholm 5 years ago. Welcome, Patrick Hamilton Walsh. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, indeed. So I am Patrick Walsh, and I am here to tell you why Stockholm is so attractive to talents like myself and many others around the world, and to give an update on where we are in the current situation around digitization and pandemic within this field. In the report, I've also listed some suggested next steps that the City of Stockholm can easily fix. I went for very low-hanging fruit to help this city more appealing to talent. And in addition to that, there's issues which could be considered at a national level, which will help Stockholm become more appealing to international talent around the world. So as Anna says, I am an Irish immigrant living in the city for 5 years. And for 5 years, I've said that this is the most beautiful and best summer city in the world. It's inspirational, and the innovation seeps out of every corner. Stockholm is one of the most innovative cities in a world which is driven on innovation. And from my perspective, I think the secret sauce to Stockholm and the success is based on one thing, and that's the great people. Around the world, we are starting to pick up on this. Everyone is realizing that it is talent and not capital that will be the key factor linking innovation, competitiveness, and growth in the 21st century. Gaining access to talent has progressively become the most important decision-making factor when deciding on the establishment of new regional headquarters. And the international competition to attract these talents is already fierce. Cities around the globe are increasingly and creatively investing more and more into attracting talent. But do we have a problem? We all know that the population of Europe is rapidly increasing, but what people do not know is that the availability of highly talented individuals is rapidly declining. And it has been doing so since 2010, because that was the year when baby boomers started to retire at a faster rate, taking their skills with them, than the new talent was entering the market. And what we find is that there is a great mismatch between the generic education that universities are teaching globally and the specific skill sets that employers require in today's market. All around the world, forward-thinking economies are transforming themselves into knowledge societies. As a result of that, there is an increasing dependency on societies to attract international talent into their cities so that they can enable growth within the next phases of their productivity. This is not new information. In the mid-90s, McKinsey launched a report saying that there was going to be a massive war for talent, where there was going to be increasing competition between corporations and cities to attract, develop, and retain the world's best talent. However, what very few people are saying is that the war is already over. It was won by the talent pool themselves, because these people now decide who they will work with, how they want to work, what projects they want to work on, and they're also becoming increasingly selective about where they want to work. 15 years ago, 80% of people would choose a company and then follow that company to the city and complete their task there. Today, 2/3 of people will choose the city before they choose the company or the job. So what has changed? For many centuries, the towns and villages around Stockholm have been sustained by woodcutters who as part of a larger team, would go out into the forest on their own and complete the task at hand. Working remotely, they would check in via radio contact if necessary. And we've come back 360. The digital organization is like this. For millennia, people have went out and completed the task at hand, whether that was goat herders on a mountain or it's a graduate sitting in a Södermalm cafe building a startup on her knee. Being alone in the completion of the most immediate task, yet connected with others working towards a common objective, is the historical norm for humans. With the advent of the global network of rapid internet connection, it was inevitable that the world would return to this nature of working. And this has been accelerated in the past couple of months with the global pandemic. I want to get this point across. It was actually the Industrial Revolution that brought the progressive idea of people working together under a single roof. The notion of a physical workplace with many employees under a single roof is actually the anomaly. Working remotely towards the completion of the most immediate task, yet connected to others working towards a common objective, is the historical norm for humans. And we all are starting to realize it's what's more natural and sustainable for all. With increased digitization and the return to remote teamwork, it will become more apparent that this is not a new challenge to overcome. But what we are living through now is a business advantage which forward-thinking corporations will strive to realize. So when you can live anywhere in the world, where will you move to from? As Anna says, I was a backpacker for 7 years. I worked by the beach, and I can tell you that that type of work tends to lose its appeal after some time. In fact, talent prefer to advance their career and find work close to where they want to live. And a city with pleasant surroundings and built on values that aligns with their own is what is much preferable. So this leaves us in a situation where the paradox is that the organization's headquarters is becoming increasingly important, and the bright lights of the city have never been as magnetic. To put it in perspective, the leading cities of the world are already shaping national politics more than is the reverse. And the reason for that is that the top 40 cities are contributing 2/3 towards the global economy, and they are contributing nearly all of the innovation. And this is why top talent is migrating towards the cities. The change in geopolitical nature of the world over the past 3 months with this COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the pace of change and taken us closer to where we were going already. So we have early indicators on this. The first one may be that we could be reaching the end of an era for the megacity for those who can afford to move. Post-pandemic, talent will move to cities which are more sustainable and have a lot fewer inhabitants. They will be attracted to cities that can match their values both economically and culturally. And we do have evidence coming out of Copenhagen that suggests Nordic cities are ideally placed in this regard. The Danish were quite quick when it came to going into lockdown. They were the second country in Europe after Italy to place lockdown on their country. However, exactly 1 week after going into lockdown, they launched a talent attraction campaign. Within 6 weeks, and I want you to take your mind back to where the world was just 8 weeks ago. Within 6 weeks, they had 22,000 people from around the world who was applying for these jobs. They had 650 job applications in that time, and nearly 3,000 people had signed up to receive information on finding a job within the country's tech industry. So who are these people? What makes them a top talent? Well, these people, they are the new currency of economic development. It is believed that talent attraction will soon be considered more important than project attraction for the cities and regions. For each new high-tech job in a city, there's 5 additional jobs that are created outside of the high-tech sector, both for skilled and unskilled occupations. For the past 5 years, the failure to attract and retain top talent has been the #1 issue facing CEOs globally. And this is why. For every 25 international students that a city can retain just for 1 year within work in the city, they can benefit nearly 2.5 million kroners to that economy. 2017, McKinsey looked deeper into it. They researched 600,000 people, and they found that when it came to complex occupations, highly talented individuals were 800% more productive than their counterparts. That means one highly talented person is doing the work of 8 people beside them. And I'm going to give you a quick example of this. Let's say we have a startup in Sweden who have got a mission-critical project that started on the 1st of January. It's going to run for 30 months, and this is their team. If they can bring in a guy from India and a girl from Ukraine, who are both deemed highly talented individuals, they can actually, instead of being finished in time for Amidalans in 2022, they can actually finish up this project in the next few weeks. That's the value of talent. But let's look at it another way. If for whatever reason these talent want to come to the Nordics, and they either cannot get into Sweden or they get picked up by a team in Helsinki, then not only will the Swedish team take the 30 months to do the project as they planned, but the Finnish team can actually start 2 years later and still beat the Swedish team to market. That is the value of getting in just 2 people who are highly talented. But do we need to worry about this at all? Because apparently robots are going to save the day. But the phrase that robots are eventually going to take your job is actually one of the most wrongly repeated prophecies of the past decade when it comes to talent. A recent Korn Ferry study found that the biggest issue was not robots taking the jobs, but that already there's not enough humans to take them. By 2030, it is estimated that we're going to have a shortage of talent of 85 million people, which is the equivalent of the population of Germany. And the impact of that is that we're going to have $8.5 trillion of unrealized revenues every single year. So the emerging reality is that humans are essential to the future of work around the globe. And experts now state that humans are indispensable, in fact. The enhanced importance of innovation, creativity, and knowledge is increasing the demand for talent as human beings. And as the technology develops, then the humans simply become more and more valuable. So, delving into the report, I've actually got a few steps that I think Stockholm could take to actually fix some of the problems within the city. And these are the 5 that I've listed within the report. I'm going to focus on 2, which I think are quite easily fixed. However, the first thing I want to talk about is this is about talent attraction and retention. It costs a lot of time and effort to attract international talent into the city. We're quite blessed in this city in that we already have a lot here. So retention is key. We must work to keep the ones that we have and not do anything that pushes them out, because from the back of the report you can see that Amsterdam and Berlin are taking a lot of the talent. And this puts this into perspective. From the Stockholm Academic Forum, we know that 81% of talent are considering leaving Stockholm when their spouse did not get the relevant job. My proposal is that we open up with what I have termed spouse care, and I want us to build on the A Woman's Place initiative, which has been massively successful. Stockholm should be a city where all spouses are welcomed and encouraged to thrive. When you think about where people meet, they usually meet at university or work or similar. So a lot of the spouses are equally or highly qualified as their partner. So when we attract a talent, we get a 2-for-1 deal. So it's important that we don't lose both of them. 3/4 of the people that I interviewed said that it was a major cause of stress within their household that their partner could not find relevant work. 100% of the people I spoke to said that it had contributed to discussions within the home about moving away from Stockholm. And these solutions can be so easily initiated and they can have such a significant impact. So how I envisage the spouse care to be is I look at it as a digital hybrid online and offline career event, which is deemed to attract highly talented international spouses who have recently moved to Stockholm. We must enable companies, universities, and these advisors to meet the spouses, and these exhibitors should have open positions and be searching for international talent. It's bringing the two together. The other thing I want to look at, which is more about the attraction, getting people in here. Strangely enough, it's the onboarding practicalities which is the biggest complaint from international talents. The difficulty in obtaining permits is a source of major frustration. this is a country where if you don't have a person number, you do not have an identity. To join the gym, you need a person number. That's how relevant it is. And one of the guys I talked to said his wife took 4 years to get a person number. The good news is that a lot of the work has already been done, thanks to organizations like Ericsson and Microsoft and those who have worked hard in this regard. There's a lot of fast-track agreements which have been put in place with large private organizations, where we have been able to reduce the processing time of permits from 2 years to 5 days. It's important that we highlight the availability of these services. They come with a very small cost, which compared to the salary of the talent is minimal. We must show the market that these onboarding services are available and that we can guide talent through this relocation process. As a young accountant, one of the first things I learned is that if we do not measure it, then we cannot control it. So I think it's important that we set a KPI around it. My proposal is 30 days, but I'm open to the city to come back and say that's too long or too short. There's other issues I think which we could look at which are outside the mandate of what the city of Stockholm can do, and they should be considered at a national level. Again, I have made 5 proposals in the report, and I'm going to focus on 2. The first one is this. A lot of the European cities have got it in place already, and the reason why it works so well is that an international house is a soft landing safe space. It helps talent to settle and feel welcomed and wanted within their new hometown. And under one roof, you can service all their administrative needs, and in those first days, it can help them to grow professionally. What this does is that it helps the talent connect with authorities in an easier way, because right now it's creating so much confusion and uncertainty amongst newcomers. The high number of contact points around the city often provide contradictory information, and the result is that it lowers morale. There's too many geographical barriers to accessing these services as they are dotted around the city. And whenever we have a pandemic, like we're living through, having people coming in from around the world and zigzagging the city to get access to these resources is just not sustainable. But I am happy to say that our Honourable Mayor has worked so hard for this within the city. In fact, we had an opening date for June of this year to open the International House. And due to the pandemic, it's been pushed back to autumn. So there has been a lot of movement in this regard, thank God. The second thing I want to talk about here is the proposal towards opening the role of a Minister for Diaspora for Sweden. The Stockholm diaspora spans the globe, and they hold the city fondly within their heart. These people are Swedish by birth, by descent, or like me, by affiliation. And we all play an important role in the story of this great yet humble country. However, this is, as an Irishman looking at this is such an underutilized resource. To put a value on this, in 2016, Ernst & Young did a report that stated that the Birthright Program, which brings young Israelis back to Israel, contributes $1.1 billion to the Israeli economy. And that's just one of the programs Israel has. They're doing fantastic work around this. And if you've ever been to Dublin, you'll realize that all of those headquarters, which are based in that city, did not come there by accident. The Irish people worked very hard across America as a diaspora to set up meetings back in their home country. I call on Sweden to utilize these great Swedish people which exist around the world and bring them into the equation here. And I say, if there's no political will at a national level in this regard, then I would call on the Mayor of Stockholm to consider opening a position of Vice Mayor of Stockholm for diaspora affairs. Because as I've mentioned, it's the capital cities which are now taking the lead and becoming more economically powerful than the countries that spawned them. 2 things I want to talk about this. These sit in the appendix of the report, and I thought it would be beneficial just to share this with the listeners. 5 things again, I'm going to choose 2. This one is a bit shocking for me because when I heard it a few times, I didn't really understand it. But when so many of the talent said this point that Swedish companies don't hire immigrants, it's something I had to research. And from my research, I can see that it's inaccurate at the extremities of the market. Both the startups and the large companies are actively hiring from abroad. If you go to Epicenter, you'll find people from all around the world. If you go to Kista, you'll find that Ericsson have basically got 500 people from every corner of the globe, and it's great. It's within the SME segment where I see an issue. Here, there's a perception due to bad publicity or whatever that it's too complicated to bring in international talent, or it's too risky to hire them because they may be exported for silly reasons. What we can do to fix this, number one, is just taking the low-hanging fruit and implementing the structures within the report can cause a more seamless hiring and integration process within the in this regard. And the second one then is doing an outreach program which highlights the benefits to the SME segment of hiring international talent, because this is a segment which can benefit most from it. And then finally, I want to talk about housing. By European capital city standards, Stockholm doesn't really have a housing problem, really. From the research I've done, I heard some grumbles of discontent. However, most of the respondents were very happy with their current living arrangements, despite some initial settling in issues. One story I heard was from a guy who moved from India. He lives in Kista, he works in Epicenter, and he enters the tunnelbana at Kista Gallerian. Within 20 minutes, he has had a seat guaranteed. He's had Wi-Fi and data the entire journey, and he's at his desk in Epicenter within 20 minutes, and he thinks it's absolutely fantastic. And I have to back it up, and I say that there's so few capital cities in this world of the stature of Stockholm that can provide that. So thank you to the people of Sweden for that. And finally, I would like to call on Staffan Ingvarsson. He's the CEO of Stockholm Business Region, who can reflect on some of what I've just covered within the report in how the city of Stockholm can help local business.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. This has been a great time hearing you talking about the findings you have in your report. I've of course read it, and I'm very keen on getting to work on how to make it possible, all the things that you pointed out in this report. You had some kind words, but you also had some clear insights, which I think is great, and some tough love in that as well. And I think we need that as cities, as organizations, to be able to move ourselves forwards. To have a discussion about this report, about the findings in this report, we have a very, very talented panel here today, but we'll also make it possible for you out there in cyberspace to ask questions to the panelists, to me, or to Patrick. So I'll encourage you to think about those questions, and please send them in via the Mentimeter system that I think now is being showed on your screen. So with that, I would like to welcome our panel to have a discussion about talent attraction. And we have an extremely talented panel, I would say, this day. I would like to start with the Mayor of Stockholm, Anna König Jerlmyr. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Helene Barnekow, who is the CEO of Microsoft Sweden. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Bault from Ericsson. Welcome. And Funda from Norgen. Warm welcome.
Thank you.
Extremely happy to have you all here today. And I have a lot of questions in my head that I know you'll be able to answer in the best of fashions. And we'll try to also get the questions from the audience through to you. And Patrick as well, welcome to this panel. This will be, I think, a great discussion. Let me start with you, Mayor Anna. What are your short reflections when you hear the reports, the findings that Patrick has?
At the moment, we are really focusing on the coronavirus and handling that. But, I mean, we need to look ahead and further how we can develop the city. And I think that is so crucial that we talk about talent attraction, talent recruitment, and I'm really impressed by the report and the reflections and the suggestions. And I said to Staffan here before that let's just take them and make them real, because we need to look at the whole issue with the spouses, and I think that is a great idea to look at the whole family when they're coming here. not only when it comes to working permissions and working with the national authorities, but also, of course, when it comes to the international schools and of course housing and other things that can make them have the best possible start in our city, and also the international students that we have in our city and the universities to let them, they want to stay and make them stay. And that's why the international house is so crucial. But as I said, we are talking a lot about how can we have more development and establishment with the global headquarters. And before we talked a lot about connectivity, it's still important, but of course, talents is a crucial thing for cities in the future. And that's why I think that should be in our main strategy as a city, to be the best possible place for talents, both within Sweden, but of course the international students and talents. And we have much more to do, but I think that just talking about this and then having great suggestions and working with the business community as well, we can have the best possible outcome, I think.
Thank you very much. Helene, from Microsoft is a fairly large global company.
Fairly, yes.
Fairly, yes. What are your reflections on the finding that Patrick has here? Can you see other cities around the world that's focusing on this and competing with us?
No, thank you for the sharing, Patrick, because I thought it was extremely interesting, and I picked up a lot of insights on what I was listening into. I moved here myself 6 years ago from Boston, and is I guess a Stockholm immigrant from Skåne originally. But I can understand many of the points that you're bringing up here, and I think one of the real fundamental I love Stockholm today. I maybe didn't 6 years ago, but I think one of the real fundamental assets we have here is what you also touched upon, the way that the city is really founded on these values, that we really stand for those things, the trustworthy, visionary and free that Anna talked about. And I think that comes across. So once you have come in here, I think it's actually really difficult to leave as a top talent, because once you're engaged in that, it's really hard to come. I've lived in many cities in different countries. It's actually hard to compete with. But it may not strike you immediately. And here I think we have something to address. If I compare to working in Boston or London in large companies, the diversity in large companies was actually much, much higher than it is in Sweden, despite the fact that we have many international talents as well. And so you got much more engaged quickly when you moved there. It was very easy to be new in Boston and London. You got really pulled into that. I think that's what you were after, Patrick. You got really pulled into community immediately. So the starting was actually easier for me in those two cities than it was being new in Stockholm, even though I'm Swedish. So I think that point is really important. And we see that when Microsoft is looking at investments and also where we invest for talent, we look at both the value match, of course the business match, but also where these things come together. So we launched the Microsoft Reactor with the Epicenter just recently, and that's only the 10th city in the world that Microsoft has made that investment into. And it's not by coincidence that you pick Stockholm. Then there is, before that, there is Tel Aviv, there is of course London and a few others. But it is because of the potential with the talent, but also the match with the values and what you want to stand for as a company. And I think these are really, really important to hold on to.
Thank you. But it seems like you think that maybe Stockholm is too much a well-kept secret. We have to be more out there.
I think Stockholm and Nordics in general are. I think it's a bit of a polarized world, so it's a difficult week to speak about these things. But if we look outside of that, I do think that the Nordics and Sweden is actually gaining traction in many ways. Exactly a year ago, we had Satya Nadella here, who's the president of Microsoft, visiting us, and Anna and I spent time with him, both of us. And after a full day here, Satya did a concluding remark in our all-employee meeting and said, "The world may not know it yet, but actually everybody wants to be like Sweden," which he made him extremely popular. Yes, you can quote him on that, Anna. But he had heard and felt so much about in all the different meetings, obviously with leaders like Anna, startups, Epicenter, large companies, CEOs, etc., and felt this was going through every meeting I had, whether it was the top CEOs of our largest companies in Sweden, or if it was with startups, innovation communities, or political leaders.
Thank you. And maybe it will be everybody wants to be a Stockholmer rather than a Swede.
Of
after
course,
this
we can
report.
tweak it.
Yeah,
We can make it Anna's quote.
Yeah, we'll do that. Carl, you work at another really huge global enterprise, Ericsson, who also has its headquarters here in Stockholm. I suppose you work with these kind of issues all the time. Are there things in the report that you think we missed or that we should focus more on?
Yeah, good question. So I joined Ericsson just 9 months ago, thereabouts. And I actually moved from, I know with my Irish accent sounds like Ireland. I moved from Jamaica actually. So I lived in the Caribbean for just under 3 years. So I looked at the report, I thought there was some fascinating data in there. But for me, I wanted to break things down. It was like put myself in a top talent situation, which was what's the 3 whys, which was why move, why the actual company, and I suppose, and then why the city, most importantly. And I think the why move piece was kind of like, yes, I'm a talent. I want to go somewhere where there's innovation. There's, I suppose, when you look into Stockholm, it's all built around diversification. It's built around freedom, but it's also it's that inclusion piece. And again, I think that's one of the big things went into the company element, which is why I wanted to go to Ericsson, because again, they live those values. It's, social media really kind of played a big part in my move. And then I suppose just the city element, that was just to the point. The city element, I didn't feel that there was enough community information there for me to actually get to know more. So I don't know if I agree. I think Stockholm is a very, very well kept secret. I haven't lived here for 9 months. My family's super happy here. I love, even at the beginning of that video, I don't have a car. I never thought I'd never have a car again because of how interconnected the city is. It's amazing. And it's only when you're here you get to really appreciate those things. So I think that's one thing that I felt was just ever so slightly missed, is like from the talent attraction piece, how can we actually showcase Stockholm more? And particularly just if there's a window there, just to build further on that. I think we do it well from a branding perspective, from a large multinational perspective, and again, we're household names in Ericsson and Microsoft. But that SME element, that's just ever so slightly missing in terms of like, how are we going to get that talent to come to Stockholm?
Interesting. Maybe we could do things together there, the city of Stockholm and Ericsson, branding the city. And
yeah. Well, again, if I'm looking at it from an attraction perspective, as soon as I arrive in Stockholm, the first thing I see is a big Ericsson, welcome to Stockholm, the home of innovation, the home of technology, and you're like, oh my God. For me, from a candidate perspective, I was like, wow, I'm at making the best move ever. But it made me feel welcome. Stockholm made me feel welcome as well as Ericsson. So I thought that was, for me, super cool.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think that all of the audience know very well Microsoft and Ericsson. Maybe not everybody has the total scope of Norgen, Funda. Yes. So maybe you should start a bit. What are you doing? You're an extremely interesting foundation, doing a lot of good things. So please fill us in. What are you doing here?
So we started Norgen in 2016, end of the year, and that's basically a foundation that helps impact entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. So when we say impact entrepreneurs, what we mean are people or entrepreneurs who are building fantastic businesses, but also with the purpose to have positive impact on society or the planet. And what we do is we offer them a hub to work from. We have an in-house VC fund that we support them with. So the idea is to help accelerate these kinds of fantastic solutions. That's what we have. Mm-hmm.
And do you see a problem with attracting international talent to Stockholm today, to your fantastic businesses?
I think, it's in the startup world a general challenge, I would say, to have access to capital and talent. They're basically putting a fight against fantastic organizations out there that are also going for the same type of talent sometimes. So we actually, we have been so much inspired by what Stockholm City has been doing in building tech entrepreneurship ecosystem here over all those years. I know that a lot of tools have been taken from like fantastic geographies like Silicon Valley, for instance, and then you basically put together all those like the people and like building the ecosystem in essence. And like what we try to do at Norgen as well is to put like help create role models of success that Stockholm City has been producing as well, like Skype, for instance, coming out of Sweden, a small country, and taking over the entire world. What that created among the tech entrepreneurs, as we see it, is that they started looking up and say, oh, okay, so we can actually set the ambition levels all the way up there as well. We don't have to think small. And that's basically, like, from what I hear, that was the story behind Klarna, one of the unicorns that came out of Sweden, which is the background story for Norgen as well. It's one of the co-founders of Klarna that put together Norgen. And what we try to do is now to create the same kind of thing. Like, I mean, can we create role models of success that then also balance impact and profits? And then we tell those stories, and then all the talent wants to come into that. So, I mean, be it international or not, like we have been actually working a lot with attracting these kinds of talents by helping create role models of success and then building the ecosystem around that. So.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yes.
There's quite a lot of questions actually coming in here from the audience. I'll try to pick a few of them. Of course, we'll have to discuss and start off, I think, with the current situation, with the pandemic that we have right now. There are also questions about that. What is really happening within your companies right now concerning talents? What are you thinking about? What are your steps that you are now taking to tackle these challenges when it comes to attracting talent in a world where we're not flying around, we're going digital? Anybody wants to start on that?
I can start. No, I think there's one. I think that I would say there's one short term, and then there's one long term perspective on that. And I think short term, I think I think probably all of us went through this. I actually talked to some of my colleagues at Ericsson exactly about this. That you go into a place and you realize there's a crisis. You realize your customers have a crisis, your partners have a crisis, so you need to just focus on the things how you can help. So we went into focusing on the first responders. We turned almost all our focus onto either public sector, helping healthcare, education, getting them to do education online, etc., or companies who didn't have all their workforces set up to work remotely. So I think short term, there was a big ask on our team members to actually say, okay, this is usually what you do. You know what? We cannot do this right now. We need to do these things. And that's, of course, maybe not the perfect talent management, but I think most of our teams really felt boosted by being part of having impact and making a contribution to society when it really mattered the most. So there was a short term, I think, unusual, and it's starting to normalize, I would say, a bit. But I think that was the situation and quite extraordinary. Long term, I think we are I think fortunate to be in a company where the mission we have and the purpose we have, and we are a platform company enabling this world which is becoming more digital. Our purpose is even more relevant, and it has actually accelerated. So our talent, we were just having a conversation actually last week, how do we look at the talent in this world? Our long-term or medium-term even hasn't really changed much. So it's the same type of focus, and it's both in terms of talent attraction, international moves, and retention, of course. And then retention has a lot to do with skilling, and we haven't talked much about that here, but I think the continuous skilling, upskilling, reskilling, giving access to that is a really important thing for talent. I think all our talents are looking for ways to constantly evolve themselves. So these are still our focus areas, more long-term. Short-term, it was something very different, I would say.
Yeah, something different, but as you described it, also something that really could get your employees to feel that they are part of the solution, creating something that creates value.
And that's an opportunity that creates value and motivation, and
probably attracts some talents as well.
Yes, I think so, and I think you feel a company is doing the right thing. I think that's a way to attract talent as well. Yeah.
Carl, I spoke to a couple of your colleagues, and they are now working from home in Ericsson, and has been for a couple of weeks, and are planning to do so in a couple of months as well. How do you attract talent in this environment?
I suppose for me, if I take all the way back in as far as January, it was the conversations we were having. You know, a lot of our senior executives were kind of thinking, okay, well, this may actually come to Europe. Did, and then it was kind of like, what is the long-term plan immediately? It wasn't a case of like, what can we do here and now? What are we actually going to do? So I think 90% of our workforce has been working from home pretty much since March. Yeah. I think that trend will continue, and it's basically business critical. But I think it's how do you attract your talent? I think I went back to just that inclusion element, and I think, you know, for us, we've been very much focused on people that are home, because again, it's a forced digitalization. A lot of companies were kind of like, you know, this is our steps over the next 2 years. It happened in 2 weeks, because it was kind of like you have to work from home. But again, it's being able to recognize people as well, but also recognize the fundamentals of people, actually their challenges at home. So I think what we started to implement was, you know, live Q&As, making sure that people, their wellness was, you know, that we could offer a little bit more around how we could support people better. And I think that it doesn't necessarily always have to be, you know, are we going to continue to bring people in? It's going to be like, in Ericsson, our whole brand is based around that person being a talent. So we've got a really strong international mobility element that we've incorporated in. If there's redeployment, there's redeployment. But I think, again, it goes down to that brand element, and I think what we've kind of pushed out there is recognizing people that have been out in the field for us, making sure that's celebrated. You know, that people are putting themselves at risk. So we all stay connected worldwide. So I think there was the two elements there. But your talent attraction plan is always going to be like, how am I going to feel coming into that organization? And I think if you're being recognized immediately, that's what any international talent, but also localized talent, will want as well, to make sure that they're part of a greater goal, and particularly in a pandemic.
Very nice, beautiful. I know, Funda, you have really changed the way you conduct business. Everything now. You conduct tests now in your facility.
We do, actually. It's funny, when I was reading the report, and when you highlighted the value of talent, right? I mean, when you have the right people that can just adapt and are flexible, I mean, you can really twist things around in. Well, I mean, in our case, it was 36 hours that we basically put together a platform because, I mean, obviously, we were running a hub. Physical presence is a no-go. And then, I mean, the fund has been going on as usual, but we really lost all our, like, events and like, all other interactions with our members. So, and also we realized that, okay, we are here to help solve global, greatest global challenges. And right now we are in the middle of a greatest global challenge. So we're not going to try to do what we have been doing. And instead, we decided to build a platform called Action Against Corona. And we put together over 100 partners and like a lot of initiatives that are like fighting against Corona, have applied over 1,000 applications from 80 countries. And then we've been extending capital as well as like other types of support through all the partners that we put together. And it's really special times right now that like so many actors are there trying to help out, because a lot of talent is unfortunately out there with a little bit of extra time, but maybe it is actually a great opportunity for us to think, where do I want to spend my time and what do I want to contribute to? And can we solve more of the relevant challenges with the time that we have, hopefully. So this is basically what we turned it into. And then out of Action Against Corona, one of the investments that we made was ABC Labs that is doing antibody testing. And then we thought, okay, we have a house that is not being used. We have an organization that is like providing solution. Can we do it at the house? So now Norgen House, part of it is converted into a test center. So we're really going with the wave, while at the same time, of course, continuing part of the things that we have been doing. as well.
Wow, and what a beautiful way to live your values.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose that is, coming down to it, those values are what will attract talent also in the
Attract,
future.
develop, retain. I mean, I think, we have the stellar go-getter team. So now it's like we're telling them, hey, so we're dropping everything, we're going to rebuild. What do you want to do? And then everyone is just running with it, of course. So it's very exciting times at Norgen.
Yeah, I reckon. We get a few questions about language coming in, about how important Swedish is for being able to function in the Swedish startup or Swedish tech environment. Do you feel that the language is a barrier here?
Well, from the findings, if we look across the indexes which list the most attractive cities for talent over the past 7 or 8 years, there's 3 characteristics which actually come to the forefront quite quickly, and one of those is connectivity, and the other big one is the ability to communicate. Sweden has been number 1 when it comes to language proficiency, when it comes to English over the past few years, and to live in a city where everyone can speak the language and is open to communicating with you in English is great for the Swedish people. It can actually be little small bit frustrating for people who move in, because it gives us less of an opportunity to speak Swedish.
Exactly, zero incentive.
Yeah, but it goes to show you the power of living in a city where people are so open, so global-minded, and so connected to the outside world. And because Sweden is a small country, it's actually very outward-looking, which means that it's very open to the world. And I would say to people who are considering moving to Sweden and thinking, is language a barrier? Absolutely not.
Language is not an issue, but isn't that a prerequisite for some work that you have to speak Swedish? Or?
There are. I mean, I agree with you, first of all, and our corporate language is, of course, English, and I think just in general, everybody speaks so good English here, so I think it's not a problem, an issue. But there are positions, I think, in many companies where Swedish needs to be. There are certain segments of the market when you work with them, it's not as comfortable in English, etc. So we have positions where we say Swedish is actually, some of them, you don't need to speak a word of Swedish. You will learn fika very quickly, right, Patrick? but except for that, you don't need a single word. And then there are some positions where we know it's going to be much more difficult to succeed if you actually don't have the Swedish language, especially when you interact with certain customer segments or certain parts of the market where there is more of a Swedish. And then we'll make sure that those are highlighted. But it certainly is not the majority of the jobs, not at all.
I suppose it's the same.
Our work language is also English, and also startup world is quite progressive in that sense. So we're, but of course, I mean, you could be dealing with the public authorities, and so you want to make sure that
you may need to read
you are
documents,
respecting
etc. So
exactly.
there's exactly. So yeah.
So
just one reflection, because you were touching on it, but during this pandemic and the business, what you are doing to help during this crisis, I think that is a sign of agile kind of approach. And it's also very important, as Patrick showed in his report, that just the small cities are perhaps better because we're a little bit faster than the mega cities around the world, and that's also a good place for talents, because we speak about Stockholm as the test bed of the country, but we want to be agile, we want to be in touch, and if you have ideas, we should be very quick on taking them on and implementing them in the city, and we need to be much faster in the future to attract more talent, I think, in this collaboration with the startups community and the innovators.
One thing that was, you brought it up in your report, Patrick, and you've been touching on the subject as well, is if you're a talent and you move to Stockholm, how do we make sure you feel welcome? Because there is something that we might not be that good at, if I understood you correct, Helene, from your own experiences. We could be a bit reserved, maybe, as Swedes or Stockholmers. What could we do to help?
I mean, I honestly think it takes two to tango a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, of course, like there might be situations where it's not so easy, but I also find that if you are not shy, then Swedes receive it very well. But if you kind of like get into that like space where like you're playing the shy as well because people are shy, then it's difficult. But I have really had zero issues in any setting, basically just going and saying hi, and then it's a great start.
That's a very good advice.
Send them to Funda, yeah.
It helps.
Patrick, what are your own experiences from this? Moving to Stockholm, did you feel that you got inside of the city?
I think so very much. In the past year alone, I have been the best man at a Swedish man's wedding, and I've been a godfather for a Swedish man's son. So that's as great as honor as you can get as a man. I believe Swedish people are very respectful, but very friendly. I always say they will not intrude upon you, but as soon as you initiate conversation, they're very open and receptive to having a chat, having a fika, and every day I meet a new person. Every single day I meet a new Swedish person that I have a chat with, and it may be for 20 seconds or for 20 minutes. And I have to say that I can only give this advice to people when they move in. I say, you will get out of Stockholm what you put in. And the more open and friendly you are to those people, the more they will reciprocate and give you that back. And I think it's, as I said, I think it's the best city in the world. And the reason why is because the Swedish people are some of the best people in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe it.
We don't comment on that.
No,
We
no,
just take it all in.
It's surprised, but it's so true.
But are you setting up? Sorry, I'm taking your role. But are you setting up in your businesses like social networking and
For
working
sure.
on that? And how is it?
I
How
think
do you
you
work
know.
with
I
this?
think for me, like as I said, joining 9 months ago, Patrick highlighted the challenges when you get your personal number, and I think we have been able to accelerate certain things. I think the whole community, and I think you touched on it as well, which is the whole community feel. Is that's the only thing. It's for me personally that I didn't necessarily get at the very, very beginning. And I think that's due to the fact that I came from the Caribbean where everybody's like super welcoming. So it's kind of a little bit of a, okay, hey, how's it going? And people are like, hello. And, you know, so for me, that was an adjustment, let's say. But I think from an Ericsson standpoint, what we do really well is we create that. You know, for example, we have like a Thirsty Thursday for like from 4 till 5. Just like in the offices in Kista, just have like, you know, alcoholic drink or a non-alcoholic drink, just to kind of get to know people that you work with. Because again, there's so many of us out there, and it's great to interconnect. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just all Irish people or Swedes. It's everyone just interacting, getting to know one another. And again, I think what the pandemic has really helped us with now is getting to just know other teams, and so much co-collaboration as well. And for me, that's probably, I actually feel like I know my own team so much better now. Because of that, just you know, spending the more times on whether it's just doing the video calls all the time or outside of that too, which is great. It's really cool.
That's nice. There's a few questions here that I think I can answer very, very quickly. Do I need to have a Swedish passport to work for the city? The answer is no. Can I become a project manager at Stockholm Business Region without speaking Swedish? Well, Patrick, what do you say?
You can.
You can. Yeah. You're living proof.
It's possible.
It's possible. That's good. I think there's a lot of questions coming in. I will try to answer them afterwards as well. The time is a bit running out. When you look at the city of Stockholm and you compare it with other cities around the world, which cities should we look at to get inspired and be even better than we are today? The Caribbeans are nice. Yes.
Yeah, well, I suppose I was in Kingston. Kingston's like, I think from a cultural perspective, like you knew everything about Jamaica immediately, because it was music, it was, you know, it was food. Oh my God! And obviously just the Caribbean, it's not necessarily just the sunshine. People, and I think that's where, from an Irishman's perspective, I could relate so much to that, because yes, we love a few drinks, we love having a laugh together, and and as well as that, clearly just love kind of we're just open. And I think that's one thing. I think Sweden, if they did that tiny little bit more, because it's built on inclusion, it's built on basically diversification, which is absolutely top class. It's awesome. And I think that should be showcased a little bit more. And I think that's where I think people will be a little bit more, have that warmth to kind of say, oh, actually, yeah, Swedes, they're super cool. Like, you know, like you have Zlatan Ibrahimovic, for example. He was just like, the guy's like the absolute king of cool, you know. And I think that it's more having that little bit of finesse, I suppose, that just because it's already here. It's just showcasing it that little bit more. I think it's be less reserved.
Less reserved.
Less.
Yes.
I don't know if you agree.
That's why we're here, because if the Swedes won't say how amazing the place is, we can say it for you. We'll promote it for you.
Yeah. No, but I mean, from the professional perspective, as I was saying earlier, I think Stockholm has done a fantastic job in like taking Silicon Valley and now making it Swedish, because it's really like sustainability and impact, these are in the DNA of the society. Or building more sustainable businesses, and then I mean you can really see the effect of it so much in the tech entrepreneurship field, and hopefully also in the impact tech going forward. So I'm happy with what I get. I've lived in a lot of like cities before settling here, and I keep saying that I just found the best one, and I'm good for now.
Oh, please stay.
Very nice. Helene, would you like to comment on that?
I also think Stockholm has an incredibly attractive mix. I think speaking on this topic that we're doing here, I think if I would look at two cities where I think we could take nuggets of, I think it would be Tel Aviv and Berlin, actually. And I think that would hit on some of the things you were saying, where you because there is a bit more of diversity meeting you. So when you're brand new, you get kind of pulled into that. And I think they're doing a fantastic job in opening their cities in that way, and also pulling back actually talent that have left and coming back and all of it. So those are two that I would look at. I think the combination of city and nature and the beauty and the values and what we stand for and all of it, I think it's hard to beat Stockholm, quite honestly. But I would look at for nuggets like that to be inspired by.
So we take some nuggets from Tel Aviv and some nuggets from Berlin and add it to the Stockholm mix.
Perfect Stockholm mix.
Beautiful, beautiful. What do we do with this then, Anna? How do we take this forward now?
Yeah, just to put the great ideas into progress and then make it real. Because I mean, we know now that the talents has won. It's now up to the cities to attract them and keep them. So let's work together to finalize this in the report, because it's talent attraction and talent strategy should be in our main strategy as a city. So I'm looking forward to working with these issues ahead as well, together with you and universities and expats, of course, in Stockholm.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Warm thank you to the panel and to the audience. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.